Welcome back, David. Bright and red.
Yes.
So this week I want to touch up your brain on what do we know about healthy aging rather than longevity, and can we kind of is it the same as long living and healthy living? And maybe you can define what would be healthy aging in how you look at things.
Yeah. So healthy aging, in my opinion, would be the least amount of drugs that you're needing to support your life would be probably high on that list, right? Meaning, how deteriorated is your body getting as you age? If you're on blood pressure medication, statin medication, and all kinds of other drugs for like, let's just say, mm, you know, arthritis and things that people normally associate with aging. At some point, some of those things will happen. So my definition of healthy aging would be how long can you put that off, right? How long can you put off that sort of scenario, right? If you're, 60 years old and you already have three, four, five of these medications, that tells me that you're not aging quite as well as you probably should. Those types of things may be acceptable when you're 80, right? 80, 85. And at that point, it's one of those things where, like, how much longer are you expected to live, right? Are you going to be living until you're 120? Probably not. But, broad level, high, at a glance, that's what I would define as healthy aging, right? How long are you staving off disease states or disease management? Because that's what that is, right? Let's be clear about what that is. That's not helping you live longer. That's managing a disease.
Well, what I'm hearing there is almost extremely optimistic because I know a lot of people in their mid 30s, 40s on a lot of medication already, like blood pressure things, mood, uh, all kind of stuff. So how do you even get to the point to avoid any kind of medical intervention with your body to be able to have high quality of life in sense of moving well, thinking clear, maybe have no metabolic issues. We know it's like I come across more often now than I did, let's say, 10 years ago, that people can't tolerate this or that food and what's actually happening there. So what can we look into trying to prevent, to intervene with our ability to be physically and mentally healthy for as long as we can.
Yeah. So number one, right, you got to look at population density. Where do you live, right? So again, I can get into the details of why that's important, but I'm trying to give actionables of, hey, this catches multiple levels of the equation, right? If you pay attention to population density, like, do you live in a city versus do you live in the countryside? And I know that we've had conversations similar to this. The reason why that's important is because the bigger the population density, the more extreme you have to be on the things you are going to need to do to keep your body running functionally correct. And by functionally correct, I mean, how does your body get rid of faulty cells and keep systems running correctly? For example, your sex hormone system, right? Sulfating cholesterol into vitamin D, into your sex hormones, into your stress hormones. The other system that's important is thyroid signaling, right? How does your body interpret correct signaling for thyroid production at night, right? Because that's a different type of thyroid production versus when you wake up, converting some thyroid that was made at night, which is T4, into free T3 for activity. Another system that's going to be, and the reason why I'm talking about these systems, not individually, like certain aspects of them, but as a whole, is because if you're paying attention to these systems as a whole, it's an alert system, right? Really, it tells you ahead of time before things get really crazy, that your environment is not very good for you, right? And so, if thyroid and sex hormones are usually the first alerts for most people, especially females. Females are more sensitive to a lot of this, and that's why you're going to find a lot of females in their early 30s, mid 30s that are on thyroid medications, for example, because they have a system or a lifestyle, an environment, something going on that's basically preventing their body from being able to tell what is daytime and what is nighttime and stopping some processes in the thyroid. Now, those processes are, when I say environment, I mean anything, right? Like it could be an electromagnetic field thing. It could be a work thing, right? A particular work schedule that you're on. It could also be a nutritional thing, right? Especially when it comes to thyroid, because most people aren't consuming enough selenium and iodine naturally through their dietary intake. And so that's going to affect thyroid in a big way. Um, and then the other thing is most doctors are very nonchalant about thyroid administration, right? So for example, if you give somebody thyroid medication and you never check their antibodies like regularly, you may actually end up inducing something like Hashimoto's or Graves' disease just from the medication that you're taking that your doctor might have put you on, 5 years ago, and you only get like follow-up blood work once a year, right? Anytime you introduce a drug, especially a drug, you need to be monitoring the feedback loops of that drug. Doctors don't do that. That's not even in their protocol, right?
And we have repeated this multiple times, but what would you suggest as minimal the frequency of checking blood tests thoroughly?
Yeah, so thorough blood tests, right? If you're not on any medications, right? You're just a healthy person trying to age well. I would say twice a year, especially for most people watching this, they live somewhere that's not close to the equator. If you live somewhere close to the equator where the season really doesn't change much, it's just 2 seasons basically, then I would say you could get away with once a year. But for most people, it's going to be a minimum of 2 times per year. The reason for that is you're going to basically have a winter mode and a summertime mode. And you want to monitor both of those, how well you are at driving those processes. But if you are on a medication, any medication, right? If it could be thyroid medication, it could be hormone replacement therapy, any medication, and I really mean that you take regularly, you should probably have blood work monitoring the feedback loops of that medication. At least every quarter, I would say.
So every 3 months or so, just to make sure that
Yeah,
everything is
yeah,
fine.
every 3 to 4 months, right?
And
Uh,
so when you say that is, you can be more specific than when you take medication, you can literally just take snapshot of something instead of doing really thorough test, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, for example, say the only medication you have is thyroid medication, right? So then what you would need is all the hormones associated with your thyroid. Not just that's the problem. See, the algorithm that the doctor follows when he gives you a medication, it's like the bare minimum, right? If he's giving you thyroid medication, you might get you'll get TSH, which doesn't tell you a damn thing because that's just thyroid signaling hormone. And if you're replacing completely thyroid, that should be zero, right? What is he monitoring? He's not monitoring anything, right? So what he would need is free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and the antibodies, because the antibodies tell you whether the medication is accelerating the body's inability to tell what your thyroid is doing, right? Because you're introducing a synthetic thyroid, right? There's a reason why, and this is why I say this. There's a reason why your body cut off thyroid manufacturing. It's not that you were defective, it's that there is an environmental or nutritional signal telling your body to slow down thyroid production, right? That's what most people don't understand when they have a disease management state, right? And we'll focus on thyroid because it's a big hitter. A lot of people, even men, get put on thyroid medication, and the reason is your body's intentionally slowing that down. You're going to intervene and bring it up synthetically. That means that your body eventually catches on. Hey, this is a synthetic thyroid. Let's up regulate the antibodies for thyroid so that we can start killing more of it off because it doesn't mess up, right? But people think that it's because the body messed up. That's why my thyroid's not working. No, your body interpreted signals correctly from the environment, and that's why it started to shut down thyroid. Because thyroid is not just how many calories you can eat. Thyroid is metabolism of all cells. For example, if your body detects that you're in a heavy electromagnetic field environment, it wants to slow down metabolism. I'm going to tell you why. Because it doesn't want to cause a cancerous state, right? It knows that if metabolism continues to run at an accelerated rate, the likelihood of a cancerous state occurring is higher. So it starts slowing down metabolism so that cell turnover is slower, so that you have an ability to combat cancerous states at a much slower pace. If you accelerate that, you could end up with a thyroid cancer. You could end up with other cancerous states because you accelerated the metabolism when your body wanted to slow it down, right? That's why I'm saying you need to monitor the feedback loops because it will tell you, hey, you were doing fine for 3, 4, 5 years of taking this medication, but now you're running into trouble again. That's a red flag of, hey, you've kind of pushed the limit of how far you can take this manually. Now you have to take a step back and assess your situation, your environmental situation or nutritional situation, whatever caused the problem to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of clarify on this, what you describe now is like physiologically healthy agent should be constantly monitoring what's happening with you and making sure that you are not kind of pulled into what we see now within, well, we've seen it for the last decade or two, that there is always a next best supplement to make you feel better. But if you are just going and buying into this marketing and taking something, you might inevitably harm yourself in long run, right?
Right. Correct.
So going from that, okay, to maintain a healthy body, first of all, you need to keep the tabs on it, so to speak. You need to understand it. If something goes wrong, check it out and make sure that you are not unnecessarily speeding the process up by taking something which is not needed at that point. NAD plus is a big at the moment, or something like that. Like I have people messaging me, "Hey, how do I take this?" I'm like, "Do you need it? Probably not." And more often than not, that's the science is not really cut very clear on that anyway. Uh, but bringing from that other aspects of healthy aging, because we can open a lot big kind of worms just on supplements alone. But other aspects of healthy aging, for me personally, would be moving well. You know, you mentioned already arthritis and all those kind of things. A lot of people will think that's an overuse. More often than not, it's probably just inflammatory response from what I usually see is from what they eat. Uh, they have a lot of joint issues. How do people go about that? And is there a way of aging in their 70s, 80s, 90s without any joint issues? Is there a chance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, your body's meant to regenerate, right? So that's why I say, keeping tabs on it starts to tell you where the regeneration processes or the building block processes, the anabolic processes are going wrong, right? For example, sex hormone creation, right? If you're not getting sunlight, you're going to see vitamin D production low way before sex hormones start to become low. And then DHEA will start to become low. And then testosterone and your sex hormones, right? So you can see the steps in line if you're monitoring things over time of, hey, I'm not, for example, you might be, 28 years old and you get a full blown, a full panel and you notice, hey, vitamin D is low, but everything else in your sex hormone panel is correct. Well, to me, immediately that tells me, okay, for right now, things are running correctly in terms of sex hormones, but your vitamin D is low. That tells me that your lifestyle or your environment is causing a problem in that sequence of events that's going to eventually affect your sex hormones. If you continue down that path 5, 6 years later, you're going to find, oh, my testosterone has started to go down or my estrogen has started to go down. And it all started with the low vitamin D because it's in that pathway, right? Now let's talk
So,
about,
sorry, I'm
go
going to
ahead.
interrupt you quickly. So I see it a lot. Can people assess their health properly when they're taking vitamin D supplement? So how long should they stay away from vitamin D supplement to assess the sequence of
Yeah.
like natural production of hormones correctly? Because more often
Yeah.
than not, I have a lot of people who are complaining to me about many things, and I already know what's the issue, but that they come back and blood test is fine, and I'm like, what are you actually taking? And then they are like 20,000 IUs of
Yeah.
vitamin D and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, you're masking the issue. We can't tell what the issue is. So what can they do to assess themselves correctly? What's their like washout period, or so to speak?
Yeah, the washout period. Yeah, that's a good point, right? So I always want an unsupplemented vitamin D, and so the easiest way is, again, I don't necessarily have a problem with taking vitamin D. Just learn to assess it correctly. That's why I say usually 2 times a year blood work, 2 times a year. So the summertime blood work for somebody who lives in somewhere where there's winter and summer, that should be unsupplemented vitamin D. So in other words, when spring comes and the days start to get longer, so what I would say is the spring equinox, which happens next month, um, at that point you stop taking vitamin D. So and then the washout period would be somewhere about 6 weeks after that would be what you could call an unsupplemented vitamin D value in your blood. So a minimum would be 6 weeks. But basically that's what I teach people to do. Hey, comes the spring equinox, if you're taking vitamin D, stop taking the vitamin D. And then whenever we get follow-up blood work in the summer months, right, June or July, then we can see, hey, this is your unsupplemented vitamin D. It's not good, or hey, you're doing great. This is actually moving really well. That tells us that you just need to keep doing what you're doing. But say it doesn't come back well and it's June, you still have July, August, and September to make up for that. And that's when we can start to troubleshoot. Is it an environmental thing, right? Is it because your environment has too many electromagnetic fields in there and are causing a hydration problem? A cellular hydration problem, because a lot of people don't understand that the act of sunlight hitting the cholesterol molecule and then changing it changes it into a water soluble molecule. If your cells are being affected by electromagnetic fields, then it unhydrates them. So it makes it so that the hydrogen molecule that's supposed to be added to the chemical processes of going from cholesterol into your sex hormones, it's not there anymore because your cells are essentially being dehydrated chronically by electromagnetic fields. So what I'm saying is if your environment is bad enough through an electromagnetic field perspective, you can be outside naked in the sun. You're still not going to make vitamin D. That's what I'm saying. That's why we need to assess an unsupplemented vitamin D because it tells us a lot more than are you getting sunlight or not. It starts to tell us about your environment.
And do you want to touch up as well, based on the skin texture, how easy it is to kind of reset your vitamin D levels at normal pace for somebody who's like light skin like myself, or somebody
Yeah,
who's
yeah, 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 yeah. So
there will be difference, right?
there will. I, for example, need about 2 to 3 hours of sunlight exposure every day to get my vitamin D level to where I want it. Somewhere in the 90s. For my wife, she's not Scandinavian. She's from
Just like
uh,
me.
yeah, Northern Europe, right? And so she only needs probably right around an hour at the most, right? Now, obviously, she can get more than that, but how do you start in training that early in the season, right? Like springtime. You just go outside until your skin turns pink. For people that are very light skinned, that might be 20 minutes. For somebody like me, that's more like a couple hours, right? But that's essentially how you know as an individual basis if you're getting enough sunlight. As soon as the skin starts to turn pink, that is the chemical reaction at the skin that's sulfating the cholesterol molecule, right? Once this cholesterol molecule is sulfated, now it's purely are your cells hydrated with the right uh, water molecules inside of your tissues. So the sunlight part is, did your skin get pink? Yes. Okay. That you sulfated the cholesterol. The cholesterol is still sulfated cholesterol. It has not turned into vitamin D yet. It hasn't turned into DHEA yet or other sex hormones. That's going to be dependent on the hydration status of the cells inside your body as specific parts of your body, depending on what sex hormone or what prohormone it's turning into. And so that's where it starts to tell us, hey, if you get an unsupplemented sex hormone panel that includes vitamin D, I can accurately tell where is the system broken. Is it a lifestyle thing? And we can ferret that out, right? Especially if you're working with me one on one, because one of the requirements is, hey, are you getting your 30 minutes of sunlight exposure? And if the answer is yes, and we're still seeing problems, then it starts to tell me, okay, there's going to be other problems that tells me about cellular hydration. That's going to be your BUN creatinine ratio. It could be your EGFR. It could be your calcium level in your blood, right? Because calcium, if the cells are being stressed by electromagnetic fields, you will see calcium in blood go up over time because it's leaching calcium out of bones into the cell stress response, and that is the calcium dependent. Cells use calcium as a cell stress response.
So let me pull you back from all this because we kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
diverged a little bit. So how sex hormones are related to joint health?
yeah, yeah.
We
So,
tell and predict.
now, if how does this all relate to sex to joint health, for example? Um, Joints don't have active vascular tissue like providing nutrients to them like muscle tissue does, right? So what they depend on is cellular hydration. And that can be done through movement, right? So moving well hydrates your joints and your fascia and your tendons and ligaments well. So moving well is a high priority. Moving well meaning you don't engage in uh, movements that stress the joints with like high impacts. It doesn't mean that you can't do those. It means that those shouldn't be your priority as far as like movement goes. It should be things that are natural to human movement, like walking, running, sprinting, throwing things, right? Like unilateral type work, and that sort of stuff, so that you can stress all the tendons and ligaments effectively. Could you do this with isolation work? Yes, you can, but you got to be careful with that because you can overdo it, right? You're just like anybody who's had elbow problems and things of that nature.
So what you're describing is now things that people usually laugh about me doing is doing body weight stuff as your maybe conditioning work or whatever you name it, might be more useful than going all out and trying to get 2 reps in reserve or whatever you name it. Because for longevity, for sustaining your health in a long term of if you define health as being able to move well for as long as possible, not so much try to destroy your muscle every single training session if you do train, but incorporating some kind of body weight stuff would be really, really beneficial. Uh, and just growing muscle at all costs might not be the best strategy for somebody who wants to be as healthy as they can for as long as they can.
Correct, correct, right. So movement plays a very good role, a priority role, right? I don't necessarily make it number one, but it's right there. It could be number one, two, or three as far as like how important is it for aging your joints well, and that is very high, right? Move well, move like you would when you were a child, right? Crawl, jump, sprint, run, etc. All of those things that humans can should be able to do well into their old years,
Or
70
they
or
can
so.
take it up a level and move like you do with your bands and everything in a garden.
Correct, right? Like that's the purpose of those types of training modalities for me. That yes, I take them up a notch as far as resistance goes so that I can still get a muscular effect. But the real reason why I'm doing them is to keep, my back healthy, to keep my joints and my hips healthy, to all of those types of things, right? And so that's why I incorporate that style of movement. And I just happen to be strong enough and advanced enough that I can load them effectively. And so going back to how the sex hormone story that I just laid out ties into the joint story, remember what I said about cellular hydration. Cellular hydration can be affected by your environment. Cellular hydration affects your joints, tendons, and ligaments because they are heavily dependent on being able to hydrate themselves through the mitochondria that's in those tissues. The mitochondria, when it gets infrared light, it accelerates how much cellular water it can make. Now, that process normally would happen just by going outside, unless you have an electromagnetic field problem going on. And that is demonstrated by people that are acted upon an electromagnetic field. They tend to report joint tenderness, feeling frail in the joints, things of that nature. And the reason for that is because the tissues, the fascia and the tendons and ligaments are literally being dehydrated. So the example that I like to give for people to understand this is if you were to take a piece of meat that has a tendon or a ligament running through it and you put it in a microwave, you can start to cook the meat. But the first thing that's going to be dehydrated and shrivel up and like get pulled tight, what is it? It's the tendon, it's the ligament that's running through that meat source. You've seen it. I'm sure that people have seen it, right? Where they put a piece of steak or something in the microwave, and way before the meat is cooked, the tendon or the ligament starts to shrivel up. The reason for that is because tendons and ligaments are essentially an electromagnetic field antenna. They are made of collagen structures and other proteins that pick up electromagnetic fields more sensitively than other tissues. So they get fried sooner than other tissues. And so that's why I say, hey, if you start picking up a cellular hydration problem in your blood work in your 20s, that tells me, hey, we should pay attention not just to how it's going to affect your sex hormones, but we should pay attention to how that's going to affect your knees, your elbows, your ankles, etc. You might start to get achy knees for no reason, right? For no reason other than maybe you're under electromagnetic field stimulation for way too long in your lifestyle, or you don't get enough sunlight to cause this passive cellular hydration effect.
Yeah, and I personally have a big discrepancy in my recovery if I go for a walk after training or not. And bear in mind,
Mhm.
I always go out in a t-shirt and shorts, so I expose every single joint to saunas. And if I don't do that, I for sure am sore in joints. It's just
Mhm.
it just comes with being as big as I am and lifting stupid weights as I still do. So we're taking care of joints, we're taking care of like strength and muscle and whatnot. What about gut health and things like that? How does that tie into healthy aging?
Yeah, that's going to play a big role, right? Because if your gut health is really messed up, not only does that tell you that your digestive tract is not working correctly, it also tells you that eventually that will affect your brain not working correctly, right? Because of the brain gut axis. It could also manifest as your skin not working healthily because of the brain skin axis. And that's a wireless system. The brain to the skin is a wireless communication, and the gut to the brain is a wired communication through the vagus nerve. So when you have gut problems, I actually feel that you're probably in more danger of mental problems, or they're coming soon, right? They're coming soon. It could manifest as brain fog chronically for a while before it turns into full blown like mental problem. Like depression or something along those lines. But gut health, then how do you get that to work correctly in your body? Well, number one, seasonal eating is going to play a huge role, like we laid out in our calorie video, right? Like the things that you eat should match the environment outside. Yes, that's unfortunate for some people because that means that 6 months out of the year you're only going to eat meat sources, and that's actually why the carnivore diet works so well, right? Because it's not just whether it's winter outside or not. It's, does your lifestyle reflect a winter lifestyle, which is you're permanently indoors and you don't actually get very much sun? That is a winter lifestyle. So people that live a winter lifestyle, even if they live in California, are going to find that a carnivore or keto type eating format tends to alleviate a lot of their problems. Why? Because you're matching it with the lifestyle that you have. You're matching your eating with the lifestyle that you have. Now, if you live in Florida or something like that, and you happen to spend a couple hours outside every day, you're probably going to get away with eating a lot more fruit, a lot more carbohydrates without any digestive issues, and it's not going to affect you, right? So in that particular instance, a carnivore diet doesn't make nearly as much sense because you're missing some benefits from carbohydrates and fruits and things of that nature,
And,
right?
and I think this is a great distinction that you just highlighted because I see a lot of people going that route where they go like carnivore and stuff like that. And then I interview them, and lo and behold, all they do is spend time inside. And when they see me eating, they're like, how can you get away with eating whatever you want? I'm like, probably because I'm outside for 4 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'll take my laptop in a park and work there instead of sitting at home. There's a huge difference from that. Uh, What else do we see in a sense of like getting mental clarity and not using that cognitive ability to being creative and whatnot as we age? Because we see a lot of like Alzheimer's, dementia, and all those kind of things. What can we do to prevent our brain from aging, if that even is possible? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, no, it is. So again, there's a light story here, and there's also a like nutrient or food story here. Number one, if you're in the US, there are products in synthetic foods that are added that are known to be uh, not just carcinogenic, but they lead to mental problems, like all the synthetic dyes that might be in food, all the synthetic preservatives. Those all affect brain power and potential carcinogenic outcomes. So number one, the food that you eat plays a role through this brain gut axis on affecting your brain health in a big way. There's also a light story here. You can accelerate your aging, right? Your skin, your brain, etc., through being indoors too much. The reason for that is the light source for most people indoors is a blue wavelength light source, absent of UV and absent of infrared. What does that signal? It signals some processes to upregulate. So, in other words, you can accelerate aging, you can accelerate skin aging, you can accelerate the aging of the eyes, and that's what eventually leads to macular degeneration. Macular degeneration or eye problems tells you that there's a brain problem shortly following because your eyes are your brain. They just happen to be on the outside of your body. They're directly connected. They're not a separate organ system. They are part of your brain. They just happen to be taking in information from the visual perspective, well, and non-visual perspective at an accelerated rate. That's why there's a hole in your skull for your eyes so that your brain can actually see outside. And so if you are having, eye problems or accelerate your eye health is deteriorating at an accelerated rate, that tells you that your brain is also aging at an accelerated rate. So things that you can do is sun gazing. Sun gazing has been shown to literally slow down the aging of your eyes, and that's by default going to slow down the aging of your brain. That there are people out there that have reversed their eyesight deteriorating from a practice called sun gazing. That does not mean stare at the sun. It just means you're staring up at the sky, meditating, doing breathing practices, that sort of stuff. Kind of like having a tanning session, right? But you're doing it intentionally by keeping your eyes open. Not, like I said, not necessarily staring at the sun, but staring up into the sky and getting all of that bright light interacting with the eye and creating a lot of dopamine in the eye. So your
and
brain and
again,
your
before you even continue, I think it's probably good to add without sunglasses.
correct. Yeah, yes, 100%. Yes. At this point, right, if you have contacts, for example, you're going to want to remove them for this particular practice, just like a tanning session, right? If you go and put sunscreen on you and you're going for a tan, you're not doing anything. You're essentially
And what
covering
you're
up.
just mentioning, I see a lot of younger people suffering from joint issues, even though they live in a really sunny places. And I'm
Yeah,
like, sunscreen do you? They're like, what do you mean? I always use sunscreen. And I'm like, maybe don't for a week or two and see how your joints feel.
yeah,
Can
yeah.
it be affected as well with advancements on wireless technology using AirPods and whatnot? Because a lot of people will do this no extra time. They go outside for a walk and then they have AirPods on. And then I personally know a couple of people who have complained about like headaches and eyesight going worse and this and that. And I'm like, okay, maybe you tried wired headphones if you can't go outside and in pure
Yeah,
silence.
and if you can afford them, you can have what's called air tubes. They're a headphone that looks like a wired headphone, but there's no wires, right? So if you're somebody who already has like tinnitus or brain fog problems or headache problems whenever that's a key thing that I ask. Like, hey, how often do you use your AirPods? Do you get headaches from them? Do you get brain fog from them? And they might not even know that it's coming from them until you remove them, right? And so, yes, the first step is wired. Go to a wired set and see if that is helpful. If it is helpful, then it starts to tell us that the 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 wireless connection between one side and the other side is literally going right through your head. A lot of people don't understand that when you put the left one in and the right one in, they're communicating straight through your brain, and that can be amplified. And we know this from that can accelerate things like uh like you mentioned brain fog. It can accelerate things like tinnitus. It can accelerate things like forgetfulness. Just a lot of things. It can even make you tired, right? Because it can try to because it affects your brain waves, and it can dampen your alpha waves essentially, and you feel like you need a nap essentially. You can be tired just from your AirPods.
Yeah, so just even being outside, doing all the right things, and then adding that might hold you back slightly, right?
Yes.
Uh, what about the last one, which is probably, well, there are a million things I want to ask you, but let's tap into relationships. How important it is to have human connection in the process of healthy aging.
Very important right now. That doesn't mean that you need to be a social butterfly and have a million people that you talk to all the time. It really comes down to like 4 or 5 people, right? 4 or 5 people that you might have physical interactions with regularly. One or two is more than enough sometimes, but people that you not only have physical interaction with, but are also like-minded goes a long way, because you start to reflect values of each other in each other. And that goes a long way in terms of just forming a sense of belonging to, whatever situation that you value, right? Like it might be just valuing, one-on-one time with another person. It may be valuing, the things that you talk about, right? Whatever conversations come out. It doesn't really matter what you're talking about, as long as the people that you're having that connection with in physical real life are also reflective of those values in yourself. Those are probably the most important things to cultivate in terms of um, the sense of well-being that you're going to get from human to human connection.
Sorry. It almost sounds like stress management in a long run. So
Absolutely.
just being there and kind of connecting on a level that
Well,
helps you
all of this, all of what
unravel.
I've just talked about is managing stress. It's just different types of stress, right? The human connection is going to handle emotional stress, stress from society, the environmental stress, the electromagnetic field stress, the lack of sunlight. That's handling biological stress. Now, I'm giving them different words, but they are all handled by the same stress component or the same stress handling system in the body, right? So that's exactly what you said. The key to aging well is managing stress well. All stress is handled by the same stress handling system. They just are coming from different parts of the environment, right? It could be emotional, so that's where you need human connection and values sharing and all of that. It can be from the environment. That could be an electromagnetic field stress that you're chronically putting up with. It could be a digestive problem. That's a stress that you're chronically putting up with because you're not adhering to certain dynamics of how your body digests food, etc. But it's all stress, right? So that you said it just perfectly. It's about managing stress better than everybody else. That's what healthy aging is.
Let me see if I can unpack this and wrap it up quickly in a sense of that if somebody wants to have this longevity, healthy aging under control, it's better to start early than late. It's better to be proactive than reactive and taking every single supplement that's advertised on TV. Uh, and make sure that you understand that everything that you do can have an effect on something later. Meaning, if you're taking a supplement or speaking to that person or being in that environment, can affect you in 10, 15, 20 years. And you can always kind of step back on that if you understand what affects you in what way. So essentially, healthy aging would be look after your body by making sure you do your MOT, so to speak. Check if something has gone wrong before it goes wrong, then make sure that you are looking after your body in a sense that move well as if you're a child. Like I always have this philosophy: eat like an adult, move like a child. That's
Yes.
you can't miss on that. And then number three is don't be don't waste your time on people that are draining you, you know.
Yes.
Enjoy the present. Stop milking what happened before or what's going to happen in 10 years. Being present with people around you might go a long way in acknowledging that that's all you need to kind of manage the stress that in the long run will help you live a higher quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to wrap it up.
I definitely have a million questions about that, but I think we're going to make another video on other things because I'm mindful of your time. Thank you as usual, David, and I'll see you next video.
See you next video.